Hey, hello to all of you. We are here, it's 10:27, and I thought we'd take a quick look at Bitcoin with follow-up on some of the things that have been posted over the last couple of days. So this is our reference chart here, Bitcoin to the dollar off of Bitstamp. Now, I've stripped it bare so that we can take a look at a few things and some potential relationships that may be forming here that are important. We're kind of stuck. It's hard to make a call here. We have two counts that are fighting for the trend here, and on the longer time frame, we can kind of simplify. As we get down to the shorter time frames, it gets a little bit more complex, and we can learn something from both. Now, here on the 4 hour, we can look at a couple of things. So, I'm not calling a top here. This is our current all-time high, but it's unclear exactly as to whether or not we've put in a high and we're correcting, or this is just part of a much larger move higher. We do have some targets up here above, which I'll point out for you in a sec. So in the interest of trying to keep it simple, you might just take a fib pull from our last significant swing low and look at this relationship. Well, if we go to this our last pull here, we came down to the median line in between the 38 and the 50. We got this spike, and then we go back up. Now that does not make our target of -23, the algo target. So that's unresolved. That's thus the question mark. That's somewhat surprising that they don't get all the way there. It may be that it hasn't come yet. So if we look at this, so question mark. Now we got to look at it maybe in a different way. So we had previously considered on the smaller time frame that we had this as a completed. It's harder to see it on the 4 hour, but we had this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially a 5. Now if we're pulling from that swing low here, which is easier to see on smaller time frames. But if that's a 2, this was our 3, then coming down for the 4, well then of course that beautiful entry there between the 618 and the 65, that target has been met. So if we're working off of this swing, target met. So again, question mark. Now coming all the way up, well, all we've done is do a 50. If we go all the way back down and look at these, because you really have to consider all of these possibilities. This is the process of putting the puzzle together. Well, now if we look at that, if we go from this last significant swing low up to this high here, well then of course we'd want to make note of the 50 over here. From that swing low to high, we'd want to make note of that 50, and here, thus the box. But I'd also want to look at maybe a few other contenders here. So if I'm going to pull up here, there's my 61865 box. So maybe we get a little higher here. If I'm considering, if I pull that off, and then we just go off of the most recent swings. If I look here, well, we've gone deep on this last one. We've gone deep on this last one. 786 held it. So maybe that's a 1-2, and we're just starting a 1-2 before we go higher again. Hard to call it, but on this time frame, that would make sense. So we got to consider that. If we look, I think it was here. From this swing low to this potentially our third, that lines up with the 38 over here. And then we have a few other potential chart patterns here. So we could have, we could potentially just be putting in an A, B, and then going down for a C. If that were the case, we'd want to look for that relationship. If this is our high, we're going to our A low, projecting from our B. You note that the 100%, a likely target, lines up here also with our 50, right? If I draw it again, see we start to get this cluster and we get a high probability zone, so tightening it down a little bit. So you've got a nice potential target here. And of course, then we're on the outside edge. That's the 200% of the internal pitchfork, and you see how that's contained it along the entire move. So this area, if we're going to come down and challenge this low here, that would be a likely spot to look for support. But then just again, taking Elliott wave out of it, you certainly could make a case from traditional charting that you might just have a head and shoulders shaping up here. So then over to our high, and then coming down here, right? So potentially you've just got a classic head and shoulders shaping up. And of course, this would be the relationship you'd look for the neckline break to be 100%. So as we just did it, and that's why a head and shoulders and ABC, very similar. So if you look there, so there's your neckline broken from the right shoulder. There's your target. So again, you got a lot of things depending on how you're approaching the market, suggesting that if we're going to come down again, this is a likely place to look for support. So just to make that point, let me show that again. But if we break it down to where we are right now, I'll take this off just to clarify, and pull from the obvious pull from my low to my high here. Well, all we've done is we've just done a 50% retracement. Keeping it simple, no Elliott wave at all. So what have I got here? I've got some sort of move up. We don't get the new high, so coming back down. Now take note. So we come to the 786. There's our negative 23 from this swing. So that's my point here, is that we've got a fib fight in a battle for the trend. So if this swing here, low to high, comes to the 786, hits that target, then again we get this big cluster down here at this zone. So that's certainly an area to have marked on your chart as potentially not only a target but a re-entry to the long side, and that would resolve some of this and would make for a cleaner count. So you got to look at it and say, okay, well, does that warrant a trade? Well, if you want to keep it simple, there certainly was a trade here this morning at the 50% with a stop under the 6.5, very reasonable. Here's your first target. So if we look at that going a little bit higher, so this is you're here at call it 56.70. First target is up here, 61.30. Nothing wrong with that trade. And then we've got some upper targets, so we want to maintain some sense of potential structure here. So if we're going to work off that 50, here's your first target. Now, it depends on, we got a little time element as to when we get there. That would be tomorrow. Right. So, and we've seen a lot of volatility in Bitcoin over the weekends. So that's a contender, which would be a perfect fit. Here's our inside, well, the 100%, I should say, of our median line. If we're going to keep going, then we look here, potential target. Then here's your big target. That's negative 100%, which would line up with this outside edge, which has been quite good for the market structure and geometry as a contender as well. And we get this time component as to when it gets there. How fast are we going to move off this low? Or so we've got this battle between, are we putting in just a 1-2 before we start up again, or is this just a process of correcting to come down here? Too soon to call it, but you can get a little, this is where going to the smaller time frames give you some advantage. So let's go down and take a look at the 15-minute, which of course is going to have much more complexity to it. So as we look at this now, I know this is a mess, right? And it's hard when for me to explain this, or if this is how my chart looks. Of course, I've drawn all these, so I know what they relate to. So let me pull some of this off here. So I'm going to take the let's take the median line off first. All right, just to clean up the chart. So here looking now, we've had this is this last swing. Now we had the double top, right? And that was overnight. So we get this double top. So here's the ABC. Now we start this corrective action. So the double top is a negative side. So that's bearish, right? That we can't get a push through new highs. And look, we get a pretty swift reaction from that. Now, so if we start to break that down, well, we can find a clean 5-wave count here for an A wave, which comes, here's our last 3. We get some structural support here. Here's our Vegas wave. Then we get this very clear ABC up into what's currently labeled as a B high. So now you got to look at it and say, well, is this 1-2 or is this AB? We can't quite say for sure yet. So if it's an AB, then we're looking for the C down here, and we'd want to look for some subdivision into that fifth to complete that C. So if it's AB, then we come down, we get this very, let me blow it up so you can see it better. And let me get that little perspective on it. Okay, so now have a look at that. So we get a 1. Here's our 2. We go down for our 3. Now coming back, we'd want to look for the 2 to the 3 to evaluate the 4, and we want to be conscious and cautious about an overlap of the 1. Well, take note here. We go right into our little box between the 618 and the 65, and we get a reaction. So again, as I will often tell you, that does not happen randomly. That is not random, that we don't overlap the 1. So that gives you some confidence that likely we've put in a 4 here, and we're going to start to head down to complete this structure. Now that's actually a better, cleaner count for us, because then it gives us some sense of where we are. Now, if we come up and take this out, which we still could do, nothing says we have to go down, but if we're going to come out and take this out, then it gets a little trickier to call this. Right now, this is a roadmap that works. If this is a potentially a swing to work from, it's not as clean. We can call this an A, B, C. Here's our 100%. So if I pull from my high here to my A low, from my B, there's the 100%, which you'd expect in an ABC. That's a likely target. We go through it a little bit, but then we don't get the clean 5-wave count that would give you more confidence in that swing low. And then here's our 50%. Right here. So we've got a little cluster down here on the smaller time frame where I've got 50%. So let me give you some context. So from our low to our high, there's our 50% right here on the red line. From our A to our B, now we got the 127, right? Square root of 1618. That's a contender as a common. If we don't turn at the 100, that's a very common turning point for a C, the 127. We're not there yet. We're putting in this. Looking here, so from our 2 to our 3 back to our 4 into our little box, then here's our negative 23 right here. So, and then we've got also structurally, we've got the A high back here, this swing high potentially offering some structural support there. Again, previous resistance becoming support. So we got a lot of contenders. This would be the cleaner trade if we can come down here and look for an entry there. Then we've got the subdivision we like to see. We've got a nice complete ABC. There is an alternative that we have to consider if we don't get the kind of reaction that we'd want to see here, which would be impulsive. If we don't get that, then we have to consider the alternate. Now, this is just the reality of, trading down at this time frame. You have to allow for these alternatives, and you have to kind of plan them out so that you're not surprised by anything. So if it's not one, it's the other. So looking here, now we have to consider the possibility that while I've currently in yellow here got this labeled as an A, B, and then coming down for a C, the other possibility is that we are going to put in a 1, 2. So that would imply that we've got an A, a B, and then we're going to complete on a slightly larger scale here, a 1, 2, 3. Let me put the wave on that so I can make it a little clearer for you to see it. Okay, so and this gets a little skewed, but you can kind of see it. I don't want them stacked on top of each other. If this is the A and that's the B, we have the possibility now that our 5-wave sequence is going to happen on a larger scale. So how would we quantify that? Well, let me take some of this off and strip it down. We know this box is significant. But if this is a 1, 2, to complete our C wave, which would be now lower. No, it could be here, but if we look at that, then what's the most common target for our third wave? Well, we'd want to pull from our high here to our 1 low. Jeez, I can barely see it. To our 2. Let me make sure I've got that right there. Yeah, let's dial that in. There it is. Okay. Going back. So 1, 2. Where's the common target for the 3? The most likely target is the 1618 to the 175. Now, take note. So that's actually, so here's the, got so much stuff on here. Let me pull this off so I can show it to you. So here is the 1618 right here. Here's the 175, likely contender for our third wave. But take note of where that lines up. Okay, so if I go back, this is what I just pulled off, but it was kind of hard for you all to see it. So if I go low to my double top high here, this is my box between my 618 and my 65. You see how we're getting this cluster down here that's lower? So we've got two contenders here for support. We've got this box that is just 618 to 618. We've got this one here, which is basically our 50%, and then it completes our fifth wave here. So, hard to be definitive about this. We kind of have to see what happens when we get to the 50. Do we get a reaction? Or do we stagger, stall, and just head down lower? Now, if you look back historically, throughout this move, the 61865 box has been very reliable. We've only had one exception where we went through it, and it was mainly just a quick wick. But you got to look at that and say, well, either one of these is a contender. So now on the 15-minute, this you're relabeling all the time. So we still can't really call this a hard low because we don't yet know. We've got to see the market either take out this 4 high, then we got to reconsider an alternative, or we got to take out this 3 low and at least complete the 5-wave sequence of what would either be an ABC completing or it would be a 1, 2, 3 completing. And whether it completes here at the 1272 or the 1618, higher probability in terms of statistically where we more likely complete a 3 would be slightly lower. So that creates the conundrum for us as traders. Do we want to be buyers off the 50 because we know algos will be buying there? But they'll keep buying down through the 618, and then they'll flip on the other side of the 65. So do we want to be, I have entries here at the 50, but small entries because I'm unclear about that in terms of its wave count. It could play, and if you just strip all the Elliott off, all I got here is a 50%, and I know algos will like that. So there's a contender for maybe a small trade. If you get the reaction, I'd be fairly quick to tighten the stop. I wouldn't take too much risk because we know we have a high probability of coming down here to challenge the 618. So you got to kind of use your own best judgment and be conscious of your own risk tolerance. If I look at this little baby count here, here's my 1. I project from my 4. Well, here's my 100%. So thus the possibility we could double bottom here. Here's the 1272. Here's the 1618 of that pull. So if you're going to be a buyer, let me reframe this box. So if you're going to be a buyer, you always got to be a little bit ahead of the 50 because algos will leave you hanging. If they're going to turn it at the 50, you got to front run by a little, as they will. But your stop has got to be at least down here on the other side of the 618. Really, you could have to put it on the other side of the 75. So now you're looking at a range from, call it 57 to 56.41, relatively tight. Remember, this is a 15-minute chart, so that looks bigger than it may be relative to the dollar amount. So it's a question of what kind of size are you putting on there, and then you have this challenge of, do I want my stop there or do I want my stop there? Well, now it's getting a little bit bigger, so you kind of are in a wait and see. So one thought is you wait. The other thought is you look for the reaction here. Do I get a reaction off the 50? If I do, if it's significant enough, then the safer play is to wait for that. Wait for the first pullback. Wait for the first 50 to 618 on that, and be looking for, now we're going off again. And we've completed the correction here. But too soon to call it, right? It would be more typical to see this complete as an A, a B, and then get 5 waves to complete the C on this slightly larger scale. But, the Bitcoin is so strong, the demand is so heavy, that it wouldn't surprise me that all we're going to do is just come down here and wick the 50, and we may not even do that. I mean, if we take out this 4, then we have to reconsider. So I guess the broader point here is, when in doubt, first thought is be out if you're not already in. Don't force a trade if you don't have clarity on what you're seeing. We've got too many contenders here. And the thing that may just make this all the more challenging is if we're now going to take out this 4 high and we start moving higher, well, then we got to reconsider the whole thing. Then you kind of got to go, shit, I don't know what the hell's happening here. So let's go back to the larger time frame. What do I see on the larger time frame? Well, all I did was wick a 50. I ticked to 50, so let me pull that off. So all I did was hit a 50. Here's my target. So if you want to keep it simple, right? So it's just a matter of how you want to approach the market. And what kind of risk are you comfortable taking? So simple. I hit a 50. I got a target. I hit a 50. I got multiple targets up here. We all want to be long Bitcoin. I mean, that goes without saying, right? So we're all in here looking for good entries to get long in Bitcoin because of the enormous upside potential. But it's not just as a trader, I wouldn't say it's a clear buy and hold and just withstand all of this. But some people have done quite well doing that. So it's your preference, right, in terms of how you like to approach the market. Are you a swing trader? Are you an only long trader? Are you willing to go short, just as comfortably as you are to go long? Most of the things that I will show here are all longs, because I know the majority of the people looking at this are looking for the long entries, me included. I do not like to go short Bitcoin, but I sure as hell am always looking for good entries to get long. So simplify. You already had your entry. Not too late. You could still catch this because we got significant targets here. You want to get into the complexity of it? Well, you got a conundrum over here. Look, I mean, as I'm recording this, we may take out that 4. Then you got to consider, oh, okay, so now am I putting in an ending diagonal? How high is this going to go, right? So here we invalidate the whole thing. If we take this swing out, well then you got to sit back and go, okay, well, what could that be now? Tricky, right? So the smaller the time frame, the more difficult it is, the more you're consistently relabeling. And, the more you have to try and fine tune. What's the advantage? Better timing on your entries, less risk because of the lower time frame. If you're comfortable going short, there certainly have been good opportunities to get short. I mean, nothing wrong with that trade if you took that, and that was pretty straightforward. Opportunities on both sides, but this is tricky, and the market is never easy. There are very few easy trades, so pick your poison here. Okay, there. Oh, I ran long. Okay, that's 22. I'll wrap it there on Bitcoin and be back with some other coins shortly.